Born at the beginning of the 20th century and living through to the end of it, R.K. Narayan experienced many of the major upheavals that shook Indian society during that time. Most notable among these events was the Indian movement for independence, which sought the end of the British rule in India. We discussed it that uh, the British rule had been established in 1858 as a continuation and further entrenchment of British commercial colonial interest. Although it began as early as the mid 19th century, the Indian movement for independence reached its peak in the first 4 decades of the 20th century. What is important as a student, as a reader, to observe is the rise of Mahatma Gandhi, the activist and proponent of non-violent civil disobedience, who became a leader of the movement beginning in the 1920s, signaled this end of the British Empire in India. So in 1947, shortly after the end of the Second World War, the time period was of Second World War was 1939 to 1945. So in 1947, India gained its independence. The first half of the 20th century was consequential, not only because of the widespread political upheaval, but also because of the cultural, social upheaval that followed in its wake. Modernization, industrialization, colonialism, all these led to tensions over deeply rooted traditional social and cultural hierarchies such as caste, a severe system of social division rooted in the Hindu religion. So, what do we see after independence? Some trends such as modernization, industrialization continue to increase. And when we come to this novel, The Guide, it is true about all the novels written by Narayan, but particularly in the guide, um, this novel touch on many of these upheavals and transformations, though indirectly, that we have just mentioned. So when we say that the great changes that that were the result of industrialization and modernization, for example, can be noticed in this novel's depiction of the railway line that comes to the town of Malgudi. When we talk about conflicts between tradition and modernity, we have those glimpses and the tensions that exist between the characters over caste as well as gender. And finally, if we see the figure of Raju, the protagonist, who became the charismatic and ultimately self sacrificing holy man, one can notice a playful and somewhat ironic evocation of Gandhi, the great guide of the Indian independence movement, who led his people to deliverance. A major part of this novel is set in Malgudi, which is a fictional town in South India, and a part of it in a village named Mangal. As a reader, what we need to observe is the way author has used narrative technique in the novel because there is a cinematic technique like of flashback, flash forward, in the plot construction. Flashback, you understand, no? When we think or see events that happened in the past. Flash forward is that when there is a reference to the event or incidents in the future. So this plot is unconventional, which revolves freely in time and space, both in between and within the chapters, shifting from the past to the present and back again, and from Malgudi to Mempi Hills to Mangal in a random but smooth, logical manner. Now you see, when there is a reference to Raju's presence in Mangal, it is narrated by the author, while his past in Malgudi is narrated by Raju himself. This is important. These things have to be noticed, that what kind of narrative technique is used in a novel. So, this technique of double narration, the juxtaposition of the past and the present, all this focuses on the irony of life, the situation of a man who is not born great but has greatness thrust upon him. The two locales, two time frames, two narrators create suspense, arouse the curiosity of the reader, and make it a very interesting reading. Let us today talk something about characters also, characters of this novel. Um, Let us begin with the discussion about the protagonist Raju. He's the protagonist, the main character of the novel, and it seems that he has a dual personality. As I mentioned earlier, his character can be explored in different phases in the novel. As a tourist guide, he tells lies and cheats the tourist for his personal benefits. Even when he does not have the knowledge about a certain place, he makes unclear statements about it and never says no. However, he does this to make their trip more enjoyable and meaningful. By his wit, eloquence, knowledge, and common sense, he impresses the tourist and very intuitively comprehends, understands their needs. Later in his relationship with Rosie, he is morally corrupt, self centered, possessive, jealous, and exploits her both emotionally and monetarily. But at the same time, he gives her what she could not get from her husband, while her husband always ignores and humiliates her. And when he even forsakes her, Raju remains very warm, caring, and understanding, recognizes her innate dancing talent, motivates her to become a renowned dancer, and thereby adds a new meaning to her life. However, this relationship spoils his entire career and life. As Marco's guide, on one hand, Raju is very cooperative, friendly, and helps him at every step. But on the other hand, he tries every strategy to seduce his wife. When Raju forges Rose's signature, he is definitely incarcerated and declared a criminal. However, the behavior of this criminal in the prison is very ideal. He helps everyone, keeping them busy and in high spirits. He is very close and deeply attached to his mother. He sobs and cries when she leaves him. But when it is time to choose between Rosie and his mother, he goes for Rosie. When the role of a saint is thrust upon him, he is more of a hypocrite exploiting the honesty and simplicity of the innocent villagers, improvising and perfectly acting his part, making impressive aphoristic statements, getting free food and respect, and dealing with the quarrel situation to avoid the police. But at the same time, he seems to work like a philanthropist. Who is a philanthropist? One who works for the welfare of humanity. So he seems to work like a philanthropist for the well being of the villagers. The collective blind faith of the villagers transform him. He forgets that he's an actor playing a role. The role becomes a reality when he gets ready to become a martyr for the cause of the villagers. So Raju possesses a unique capacity to adapt himself to all kinds of situations. He is a genial, self made man, extrovert, loves life, and lives every moment as it comes to him. So this dichotomy in his character seems very complex, but this very dichotomy sustains the interest of the reader throughout the novel.